All right. Well, thank you so much for sticking around after this film. This is the world premiere of the Witmans at the Philadelphia Film Festival. My name is Trey Shields. I am the senior programmer of the festival, as well as the Philadelphia Film Society. And it's such an honor and a privilege to introduce our very special guest this evening. We're going to go around real quick just to introduce everyone. We got a full house. We have David Petersen, the director of the film. And then we have Gregory Timmons, the producer.
Hey there.
Nikolas Diener, producer.
Hey, everybody.
And then we have Shannen Sun-Higginson, producer.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for watching.
And very special and honored guest, Sue and Ron Witman of the film.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So there's a myriad of questions. Just as an interesting anecdote, I don't know if you guys know, we did show a short, The Witmans, 20 years ago as part of our local showcase as well. So it feels like a really special and personal, intimate kind of full circle to this. But having a room full of producers, and if you don't know, producers can mean a lot of different things. Whether you're a line producer, creative producer, development, it can mean a lot of different things. So I'd like to first know about your individual roles for the producers in our group for this film.
Sure.
Nikolas,
Yeah. Greg and I and our friend Joe have been with it for over 7 years now. And Joe's father, Rick Lee, the reporter from the film, reached out, like I said, something like 7.5 years ago. And we started a conversation. We met Ron and Sue, and ever since then, we've been filming ourselves, and then at times with other people, and then finally with Dave's help and CPZ's help. And we've been camera in hand the entire time, pretty much. And yeah, it's been a ride.
Yeah, I'm there with Nick. I began working on the project in 2012 with Nick Diener and Joe Lee. And it originally was a way to help Joe Lee get his exit film project done for his bachelor's in film. And I think from there, we became really connected to Ron and Sue. The relationship was really easy to have. We all had a lot in common, and we connected pretty deeply with the family. And it was immediately apparent that this was a story that needed to be told. My role in the project specifically, I have an executive producer title on the film, but I've conducted a lot of the interviews. I've shot a lot with the camera. I've done grip and gaffing. So a lot of the camera movements, some of the organization, not so much. That's more Shannen, ZPZ, and Dave. But I've been there as a technical backup through all steps of production into editing as well.
Yeah, and then after these guys sort of, started the project, they have a real insider track to it. So I came onto the project in 2014, which I guess was 2 years after you guys. I was introduced to Joe Lee by a mutual friend, and immediately was hooked on this story. And like I said, they just these three original filmmakers had such great access. They knew the story front and back. They're from the area, so they're so familiar with it, and they had this great relationship with Ron and Sue as well. So they kind of brought me on as a producer to help, like Greg said, organize, facilitate interviews, kind of come up with story development, and then ultimately create the partnership that allowed the film to ultimately be released, which kind of is what led us to Dave.
And it's been an honor to know everyone on this team, especially Ron and Sue. I think I learned so much from them as a parent myself, in terms of how their story unfolded for me, and how it began. Most of my films are about small communities, usually outsider communities that are very tiny. And this seemed like a very tiny story that had a microcosmic impact on the larger nation. And so that's what really compelled me to this, because, you know, it took place in a small town, and I love small towns and one family. And this whole notion of a metaphor for our responsibility as family members, if we had had a tragedy happen in our family, how then, as a society, could we then deal with that? Well, if it was a brother or a relative, we'd say this is tragic, and we would try to address it. And so in that way, that metaphor was very powerful in expanding it out to civil rights and juvenile justice.
Yeah. And for Ron and Sue, what was it like to have cameras suddenly be in your home and to see yourself depicted on screen?
Oh, we just loved it. The guys and the girl and Shannen were phenomenal. They made it easy. I'm going to have to say, it is. I didn't mind the camera issue. The issue that I had was telling the story, remembering everything, what you do, but bringing it up, obviously talking about it. That's difficult. I talk about it today all the time, but in the way that those answers to their questions would be helpful. So it did, you know, the guys have been, Shannen, been working on this for years, as I just said. That part of the experience for me was, I got to meet some really great people. And to be very honest with you, with what has happened to us, I didn't realize there were still good people in the world. And there are.
I pretty much agree with everything Sue said. I think the toughest part for me, because I was most familiar with the transcripts, legal documents, photographs, eyewitness reports, police reports, read through all the litigation, which was voluminous. Probably were 5 or 6 hearings before the trial. The trial itself was rather large in paper and reading. And the toughest part for me was going through all of those things again and just constantly reliving it. And, you know, it was tough, particularly, but we understood why, when they needed us to do the same interview again, so to speak, because for whatever reason, you know, the lighting might have been bad, or, you know, it might have been, the dogs may have barked or something that distracted from what they were trying to accomplish. So we go through it again, and then it, you know, so it just drags it up, and it just brings it to the forefront, and it's very difficult to deal with in that regard.
Yeah.
And there's one other thing regarding that. Like everybody else in any relationship, we handle things differently. Ron handles things very differently than I do. No one's right and no one's wrong. So when you have to keep talking about such a horrible thing that happened to your family, you tend to not show your better self to each other. And that's been difficult.
Now, do you find a sense of catharsis with the completion of this film? Do you think you may not be talking about it as much besides at the present moment?
No.
No.
I think that, you know, one of the things that we believe is that Zach was railroaded through a system because he was an easy pick. We know the boys. We know the relationship they had. We know Zach's personality, but he was in the wrong place at the wrong time with a small police force that was virtually incompetent in a homicide. And I mean, they tracked through the crime scene before they even photographed it and so forth, and disturbed everything in there. But they put blinders on, and they just moved forward, and it just continue. The newspapers were absolutely horrendous. Talk about being tried in the press. I mean, from day one, Zach was just, he was just a demon. I was actually referred to as the father of Satan in one of the articles. So it's something we've had to deal with as well.
And obviously, not only, I don't think it's any easier personally, even though Greg's been gone for 22 years. I don't find that easier. Okay, every day I wonder what would he be doing now. And the other thing is, naturally with Zach, I hope that we can give Zach the necessary guidance that he needs to have a good life. But he's an uphill battle. And obviously none of us want to see our children have to face such a battle. And he is going to have one.
Yeah.
And the other thing, sorry, honey, but Zach is a bright guy, and he is. Because he takes after me, but what the hell? He is a very bright guy, and if this wouldn't have happened to him, Zach could have done anything he would have been interested in. Anything. I truly feel that way. And now he's going to be very restricted to to a livelihood. He's not going to be able to do many things because of his record, and that upsets me.
Well, I think you
Just to comment very quickly on Sue's talking about 22 years. The things that you hear that are very upsetting. Time heals all. It was meant to be. This is God's plan. All of that is nonsense for anybody who's experienced it. It doesn't go away, and it doesn't get better over time. It gets worse because every day is one more day that you've been removed from your child, and one more day that you've thought about where would he be now, and where would both of our boys be now if this tragedy hadn't beset our entire family.
Well, I thank you so much for your courage and your strength to be able to present this, and because it's going to bring awareness to the issues. Brian Stevenson being involved is huge, and I'm so thankful for you to share your story. And with the story being still evolving, I wanted to ask the film team, obviously being an evolving story that's constantly changing, was it difficult to adapt? Was it difficult to construct a narrative for just an hour-and-a-half documentary? What was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, with any documentary, when you first start, you never really know where the story is going to take you. We just knew we had this heart of the story, which is Ron and Sue so generously sharing, their innermost feelings about a tragedy that is unimaginable for anyone else besides them. But beyond that, when we first started, I think all of us kind of thought of it more as, a little bit more focused on the crime or the legal proceedings. And we tried to find that balance over time in the edit with the sort of greater message about the criminal justice system. But, sort of as things developed, in my mind, at least, I kind of thought, oh, well, we'll be with the story forever because it's a story about a juvenile life where there's no end, sadly, to the story. But because Zach was able to get out on parole and because of the Supreme Court ruling, we actually had an end in sight, which sort of allowed us to then retroactively look back at everything and sort of see what we had amassed over those, for these guys, 8 years.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's so important about the film for me, because I came to it, with Shannen and Nick and Greg and of course Ron and Sue telling me the story, and then I had to try to say, well, okay, now how do we step out from the town to make this, a national sort of more global sense? And and I read Brian Stevenson's book, Just Mercy, and had really just, and interestingly enough, he had argued the case that freed Zach. And so there seemed to be a very direct connection. And then we discovered that not only is the United States the only country in the world that sentences its children to die in prison, but Pennsylvania, weirdly enough, had the largest number of kids sentenced to life without parole. So then Pennsylvania became essentially the place in the world that had the largest number of children that are sentenced to die in prison. So again, it started with this little town and this one case, and of course Ron and Sue and their family, but then it had all these implications that broadened out, and that was part of the evolution of discovering the film and discovering, that larger umbrella that made it universal, I think.
Yeah,
There
so
was
it
also
seems
a
like
lot of.
Daniel, you go.
I was just going to say, there was a lot of hope involved in this, because when we began, there was no end of the film. And I don't think any sane filmmaker jumps into creating a feature-length film that has no end in sight. And it took years for these legal proceedings to inch forward. And a lot of it, back to your question on how did it feel, and how long we spent doing it, it was very emotional. And I think asking Ron and Sue to get back into that day to, October 2nd, 1998, and be in that moment was difficult. And a lot of what we spent our time doing was connecting with them and really truly trying to understand the information. It was, as Ron said, voluminous. It was a gigantic amount of information to take in. And sifting through that was like panning for gold. So it was, I think there was a lot of hope that an ending would be there and that a story would be told. And it unfolded in front of us, and we just kept following it one step behind as things evolved.
And when you talk about following Ron and Sue, how much time is that involved? Is it more so on some years when there's, say, case activity going on? Is it just a week out of a whole year? How does that work out?
Yeah, the activity of filming it got progressively faster. Towards the beginning, at least after we finished the short film, it was that was our summary. And even then, I remember, days in the edit room with the three of us, Greg, myself, and Joe, saying, there's no structure here. This is just pure and utter tragedy and no real end in sight. So we spent a lot of time, I think, after that, just kind of waiting. We were always hanging out with Ron and Sue and sort of keeping abreast of what the sort of legal proceedings were at the time. But towards the end, I'd say the last 3 years, and especially the last year, was the busiest, because that's when everything sort of finally shook loose, especially after the Supreme Court hearing. Then there was a sort of an indication, some little sparkle of hope of getting Zach out. So it really accelerated at that time. And then there were many things happening, many sort of milestone moments transpiring, 1 month to the next month to the next month. And then sort of finishing with Zach getting out. That was really the busiest time.
Yeah. So was it difficult to get coverage outside of your tight bond with the Witman family? Because, we see a little bit of initial hostile feelings or out of fear when the incident first happened. But when getting these interviews, what was that experience like? Was it difficult? Were people open to talking? Were they hesitant to revisit it?
Yeah, we had quite a bit of difficulty, especially prior to the Supreme Court hearing and that movement that was happening sort of on the legal side of things. We had a lot of difficulty in getting people to agree to be part of it, because we were either trying to talk to integral legal figures who were involved in the case when it happened, and who had, I would say, a little bit of a vested interest in letting sleeping dogs lie. And then, you know, it went on from there to the point where I think people wanted to set their record straight, or make sure that they had a clear and concise message about their feelings and findings. So it got easier over time, and I think David Petersen, just out of experience and accolades and everything else, was able to say, hey, you might as well say something. I mean, it's really important for you to address this. So we ended up getting a lot of those interviews, like I said earlier, again, in the last 2-3 years of time when things were actually moving forward.
Yeah, I think part of it too was that there was a kind of gathering coalition of people. Once one person like Michael Barker started to participate, and of course having Brian Stevenson also helped, because you know, I'd done a lot of films that dealt with civil rights, and so he got involved largely because of that and the case itself. But I was totally driven too by the sense that I wanted Ron and Sue and Zach and Greg to have a voice that is unsung in these cases. You know, you can get all the pundits you want together, but if you don't hear from the family and the suffering, where there is Ron and Sue, what they first say at the very beginning is, if it could happen to us, it could happen to anyone. And then when you start to think of all the children that don't have the advantages of a middle-class family, you think about their fate in the juvenile justice system. It's you know, Zach becomes a canary in the coal mine. And so that kind of argument brought other people on board as well. And right, to set the record straight, you're right, Nick, you know, I think they wanted to clarify their view. And for me, I just wanted to get their voices heard too. I wanted to hear Michael Barker's view. I wanted to hear the forensic viewpoint. I wanted to hear this sort of chorus of different voices. And so they would ping off of each other. And ultimately, I wanted us to ask the question, what responsibility do we have as a society for our children? You know, do we just put them in prison to die there? And that, to me, is a big question that I think everyone was grappling with, even those in the prosecution.
Yeah, and you mentioned making sure the different voices are heard. Now, you as a kind of as sculpting this project with the rest of the team, did you find it difficult to be objective at all? Or because, you know, you guys have been so close with the Witman family, was it difficult to step away when it came to like the editing process and making sure other voices were heard?
Weirdly, I would, to Ron and Sue's credit, I'd say they're as objective as you could possibly be given their position. I can't count the number of times I've heard Ron or Sue say that if they felt or had any indication of things being different, they would want to know. And that's something that I think we all came to it with as well. There's this process that every single person that got involved with the film had to go through, wherein you first hear the circumstances and you assume, yeah, this is open and shut. Why is there any discussion? And then immediately, as soon as the human factor gets added to that equation, to your own judgments, everything sort of bleeds out into gray. And it's really important, I think, for that. I think it's really important for people to sort of get an experience that's similar to that. And I think the film does that to a great extent. taking you through those levels of realization that what is on the surface kind of one thing is actually something completely different underneath. And it was an interesting process, especially to see new people get brought on, and then you have to say, well, you know, it may seem that way, but X, Y, and Z. And you know, you end up in the very end effect being quite confused. It's tough to sort of keep your bearings straight, and it's also then important to maintain that you're trying to sort of get through everything as objectively as possible, addressing everybody's input and allowing, especially people like Tim Barker, to say, well, this is why we think X, Y, and Z. And that's actually
Tim Barker. I said Michael Barker. I think he just hit it.
No worries.
Yeah.
That's a perfect demonstration of the sheer number of names that need to be memorized. Yeah, it's really tough. And I think we had such great access to Ron and Sue and to all of the information that they knew, and to people on the prosecution or on the defense's side, with almost the whole real productive process was trying to get people on the prosecution to tell us how they saw things. So to that extent, I think that was really the main thrust of how we were trying to stay objective, in that the main mission goal was to say, hey, you who thinks this, tell me why, and to get that on camera.
Yeah. And for Sue and Ron, I'm sure everyone watching this right now, this is a documentary, but life doesn't stop where the credits roll. I'm sure everyone wants to know, if you feel like sharing, how are you doing these days? What are you up to? What was your experience like seeing this film in general?
Well, we haven't seen it yet.
Oh.
So can't comment on the film. I have mixed emotions about seeing it, to be honest with you, because the ending for us is bittersweet. You know, Zach's out, and for a lot of reasons, that's great, because of coronavirus, because of Amy Barrett's sitting on the Supreme Court now. There's already an article. I follow Montgomery v. Louisiana, and I have a Google search site on that. And there's just an article in there that they fully expect that all of the juvenile movement forward is going to start being rolled back. And I mean, even so far as there was one comment that they believe the death penalty is going to be reinstated for juveniles. So that's obviously very concerning to us. For the other people that we would never want to have happen to them what has happened to us, at least for the moment, even though the sentences are too long, in my opinion, there is an element of light at the end of the tunnel, very long tunnel. When you talk about putting people in for 25 or 35 years to 50 years or 35 years to life, doesn't leave them a lot left, no matter how young they were when they went in. And in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania in particular, those are the standards. So it's very rare that someone else will get out sooner than that. So, you know, if they're 15, they're going to be minimally 40 or 50. And if they're 18, that much more. Yeah, it's just a concern about society moving forward and the impact on, I mean, this will happen again. It probably happens more often than people know. Most of the time, it's probably just, you know, pretty much ignored totally. And the only reason that we had been asked to be involved in this was it started with Joe Lee, who's the son of the newspaper reporter, court reporter for North Daily Record,
Who hates us?
who was very, very damning to Zach through all of his articles for several years. And he gives me a call one day and he says, my son's been following this and he doesn't think he did it based on what he knows. And he'd like to know if he's, been following this now for several years, and from being a young teenager to being ready to leave college. And, he would like to know if he could interview you and perhaps talk to you about this project that he's working on and see if you would be willing to be involved in it or speak with him openly about what your experience is. So that's how we have come into vision, but that doesn't happen, I don't think, very often. But I think the railroading of individuals, especially juveniles, who are totally incapable of protecting themselves from law enforcement, and very often law enforcement will take the opportunity to interview juveniles without their parents, without their lawyers, because the kids don't know anybody. And there's kids that on multiple occasions that have finally said, after 18 hours of being badgered by police, well, I don't remember doing it, but if you told me I did it, I must have done it. Or, well, if you tell us you did it, we'll let you go home to your parents. And this is not seen. It's not, that is not illuminated. And so people, they go through the courts, they get thrown in jail for life. And there's just, it's just a sad state of our criminal injustice system.
Well, once again, I hope this film reaches the audience that needs to see this, because it is going to raise awareness. Shannen, what is the future? Today's the first public screening. What's the future of this film?
Yeah, so Discovery purchased the film as an acquisition, so it is premiering on December 1st on Discovery. And I know there have been some talks of, further distribution beyond that, but, I think when it comes to the viewership and the audience, just to sort of go back for a second to the previous couple answers, I think, it was super important for us to get folks on both sides to tell a story that is truthful and that people can say, oh, well, we can tell like it's not super lopsided. But if I could make a story about this family portrait of a tragedy and an injustice, and I had the choice between that or telling a story with, big names like Bryan Stevenson and, the prosecutor and the judge and the defense attorney and all those folks, I would definitely pick the side of the portrait because, the first line, well, Ron, you don't know this, but the first line, really one of the first ones in the movie that you say is, if it could happen to us, it can happen to anyone. And that's really, the message that we're trying to get across here is that this is just anyone's story. And that was just really important to us. So we're hoping that people can sort of see their own families reflected in this story and really take it to heart when they think about the criminal justice system and what we do to our children.
Yeah, well, I think you guys succeeded leaps and bounds above any expectations because, yeah, I agree. The character portrait is what's going to make people remember, touch the heart. It won't just be salacious headlines. It won't just be facts and data. And you guys just being so open, Sue and Ron, it was extremely powerful and touching movie. I hope you are able to watch it someday. I totally understand that you haven't decided to view it yet, but I just can't thank you enough for participating in this because you're going to change lives.
Well,
Been our pleasure.
it's been as obviously, when you do something like this, you kind of think of yourself first. But then, look, this should not happen to anybody. I would not want this to happen to anybody. And once again, as everyone has said, as I've told my friends, if this can happen to us, happen, then it can happen to anybody. No one thought about that. No one ever thinks about that, right? Your parents don't explain this to you. You know, they explain other things about life. They never, who would ever expect this? And it happens. And we're perfect. Unfortunately, the example, not the example, the what am I trying to say? The story. I mean, you know, again, it happened to us. It's just still very, very difficult to answer your prior question when Ron was speaking. It doesn't get much easier for me. It really doesn't. I have to, what I try to do is find distractions to help me through the day. And that's really the only way I can handle the days.
I hope like your strength though shows through it, no matter if
Well,
you're just knitting or crocheting, like it's.
yes, right. But I also know, and I also feel that we have to be here to help Zach, and that's it. There's no other question about that, and that keeps you going. He deserves it. He's a great kid. Everyone says that about their kids, but he is a good kid. And if we're not here to help him, who's going to be? And that's something that Ron and I want to speak for Ron, take very, very seriously.
Well, I think you're surrounded by a great team that was able to spend so many years with you guys to really learn your real story. And I just want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. It's so exciting to be able to present this to the world. Thank you to all the audience out there. Is there any kind of way people watching this, because they can watch it for the rest of the festival, we'll keep it on our YouTube for months and years to come. Is there any kind of way to contact you guys about further information, about spreading the word about the film?
Yeah, it's pretty easily found online. We've got a Facebook, we've got a website, easy enough to reach out via the contact page there. And yeah, I mean, there's no end. The story's not over, really.
It'll never be over.
Yeah, I mean, I think when something happens like this to the median, then you know that the issue is systemic. And it's important for that point, like Dave was saying, the macrocosmic sort of ramifications of the story to be transmitted through the human story to other people. Yeah, I mean, there's still things to talk about. It's not over. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting and compelling to see how things move forward. There's a lot left to work on in terms of criminal justice reform, and this should hopefully be a seed.
If I may ask, if I'm being heard, what is that website for everyone's benefit?
That's real. I actually don't have the URL offhand, but I will get it in a moment. I'm pretty sure it's just the Witmans.com.
I think it's the Witmans.com.
Yeah.
And we also have whitmanproject@gmail.com if you want to just contact us directly.
Correct. That's right.
Yeah, and we're always here to be a platform for you guys to share your continuing story. But thank you again, and thank you to everyone watching and who are going to be watching this conversation down the road. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Everybody vote. Vote for compassion. Vote for reform.
Vote.
And vote
Good night,
some more.
everyone.
Everybody take care. Thank you again.